Series 19 began airing on the 27th of January 2013, and the series itself didn't feature anything particularly groundbreaking. The show had now been on for 11 years and was a huge success, so why change anything? As was common in several previous series, this series featured an epic race. This time the race went from Wembley to Milan. It harkened back to a Series 7 race where Clarkson raced Hammond and May from Alba, Italy to London. The Wembley to Milan race is very well remembered, and for me personally is one of my favourite races Top Gear ever did, including post-Clarkson Top Gear. It was a rare instance in which the public transport side beat the car side. The race worked as genuine entertainment, but also a look at the European railway system. It may sound boring, but in the episode itself, factually or not, they make railways sound quite interesting. The Kia rugby match at Twickenham was another memorable episode, and this harkens back to a previous episode where the presenters played car football. The rugby match was simple and yet an effective segment, a completely ridiculous yet hugely entertaining piece of television. Series 19 concluded with a two-part special, the Africa Special. This was the first time a special was split into two parts, presumably because of the amount of footage that couldn't be cut due to various reasons. Whatever was the reason for splitting the special in two doesn't matter. The Africa Special is a pretty great special and worked very effectively in the two-part format. At the time, it also worked very well for the series to conclude with a special. This hadn't happened before. It made the finale of the series seem a little more exciting in the general hubbub and anticipation. From a marketing point of view, splitting the special in two and airing it at the end of the series was a great decision. The special itself is nothing hugely amazing, but is entertaining and makes for great television. Series 19 is one of the more underrated series in the Clarkson era, but continued the consistent success. The series averaged over 6.5 million viewers. Every few years, the show would introduce a new reasonably priced car, and on at least two separate occasions would invite several celebrities for a garden party of sorts to test the new car. In Series 20, this tradition continued as the show introduced the new reasonably priced car and the last of the Clarkson era, the Vauxhall Astra Tech line with a lifetime warranty. The Celebrity Garden Party / car event featured in Series 20's opening episode, which aired on the 30th of June 2013. Several celebrities pitched up for this episode, and they were the then lead singer of AC/DC Brian Johnson, the actor Charles Dance, more recently known for being in a show called Game of Thrones, actor and television presenter Warwick Davis, singer Joss Stone, comedian and ironically awful driver Jimmy Carr, boxing champion David Hay, television presenter and countdown mathematician Rachel Riley, and finally Genesis guitarist and songwriter Mike Rutherford. The fact that the show was able to get some pretty famous people over for a lap time on a BBC Two motoring show said a lot about how the show had truly become an international hit. Over 300 million people watch the show worldwide now, and despite that, the show didn't seem to lose momentum under the pressure of now being not just one of the biggest shows in the UK, but one of the biggest shows in the world. The finale of Series 20 has been widely viewed as the episode that should have ended the Clarkson era. I'll get to how the Clarkson era did conclude, and there's a lot to cover, but many people regard the finale of Series 20 to be so good that it acts as a very good conclusion. I've seen several comments on the internet saying that it would have made for a perfect or near-perfect finale. The episode itself included a review from each presenter focusing on a new British vehicle of some sort. Clarkson reviewed the then new Jaguar F-Type, May reviewed the new Routemaster London bus, and Hammond reviewed the then new Range Rover Sport. So far, so good. However, the final act of the episode included a magnificent display of a variety of vehicles built in Britain. Vehicles were lined up on the Mall right by Buckingham Palace. The episode is very highly regarded, and in hindsight this would have made for a perfect conclusion. But the Clarkson era did not end here, and there were two more series before it came to a rather abrupt conclusion. Top Gear's 21st series began on February 2nd, 2014 with a simple challenge involving 1980s hot hatchbacks. A very simple way of kicking off the new series in a way that everybody was used to. Despite Top Gear's ever-growing global profile and budget, it was interesting that sometimes there would be a quote-unquote cheap episode such as this one. They could probably have been able to afford a huge international episode, but here, no. Things were a little more restrained, filming in rural England and Wales. The third episode of this series featured the Ukraine road trip. Ukraine was an interesting country to choose to visit on the part of the producers. The Ukraine film is pretty well done, it's nicely shot, it's funny, and does all the things that you come to expect at this point. That is, until the final section when they drive through Chernobyl. It was fascinating to see it on screen, and during this portion of the episode, Top Gear feels like a real documentary. It doesn't go into too much detail, but it goes into enough detail that the scale and seriousness of Chernobyl is made obvious. Around the time that this episode aired, Ukraine was suddenly in the news due to Russian military action. It was interesting at the time that Ukraine was coincidentally in the news for the first time in years, just as a Top Gear episode set in Ukraine was airing. As with the previous series, Series 21 ended with a two-part special, this time going to the Asian country of Burma. It was an epic journey across two countries, Burma and Thailand. The concept around the special is pretty great. It consisted of the trio heading to Thailand and building a bridge over the River Kwai, a nod to the film of the same name starring Alec Guinness. Much like previous Top Gear specials, it had its fair share of controversies, most of which are forgotten about after a few weeks. How controversial Clarkson's Top Gear was really depends on who you ask. The Burma special was a success, achieving good overall reviews and ratings ranging from 6 to 7 million. Top Gear would previously have a special broadcast a few weeks before the broadcast of the main series. But in this case, Top Gear continued the two-part special format that had proved so successful with the Africa and Burma specials. The specials were the Patagonia specials and were broadcast during the Christmas season of 2014. Of all the Top Gear specials, this was the one that undoubtedly caused the biggest stir in the media. Patagonia, for those who don't know, is a region in South America that covers both Chile and Argentina. The special was basically celebrating the V8 engine, so the cars chosen had to be V8. Hammond chose a Ford Mustang Mark I, and May chose a Lotus Esprit. However, Clarkson wanted a Porsche 928 GT, which was rare in Britain, so the numberplate of the car was effectively the main cause of the controversy, as it, according to some people, referenced the 1982 Falklands War, an area of understandable sensitivity. The special is regarded on its own merits as one of the weaker specials that they ever did. The cinematography and the general concept around the road trip is great, but the jokes feel very pre-rehearsed and obviously scripted. Top Gear was a scripted show, but the best examples of it being scripted are when the audience forget that what they are watching is scripted. Not everything was scripted, some things were obviously accidental or just spontaneous. The Patagonia special is generally regarded as one of the more controversial episodes of the Clarkson era. The episode caused a bit of a diplomatic spat between Britain and Argentina, though the BBC refused to apologise. Some people have thought that the number plate fiasco was a marketing stunt gone wrong, which to me sounds a little bit like a tinfoil hat conspiracy theory. The show was already cemented as a huge hit by this point, pulling in 5 to 7 million viewers most weeks. So why would the show bother with a marketing stunt if it obviously didn't need one? Whatever happened, this episode heaped more pressure on the Top Gear team. The show was still popular, sure, but the added controversies, intentional or not, added to the pressure of making the show, which was getting bigger and bigger all of the time. Series 22, the final series with Clarkson, began airing on January the 25th, 2015. The opening episode continued the semi-tradition of a race. This race was of a smaller scale to what audiences may have been used to. The race went through the Russian city of St. Petersburg. As Top Gear races go, it's quite good. Nothing to shout about here, but it made for an entertaining opener. The very next episode went a bit further in terms of location. Episode 2 was set in Australia. The episode featured no car reviews in the usual sense. Of course, each presenter would talk about their car, the issues, the positives which happened whenever there was a road trip. However, the only time the episode cut back to the studio was for the star in the reasonably priced car. It was certainly something the show had done before, but it allowed more time to be devoted to the film, without having to cut bits out. It allowed for an immersive episode, which wouldn't have been the case had the car reviews also been included. The episode was actually watched by more people than the series premiere. 6.41 million people watched the first episode, while 6.56 million people watched the second episode. Series 22, in my opinion, is one of the best series they ever did. Ignoring the controversies that were usually, but not always off camera, or at least not the main focus if they were on camera, the ambition and scale peaked with this series. I would mainly put this down to budget rather than any brainwave idea that anyone on the crew may or may not have come up with. The tests and the challenges are fun and entertaining, but aren't especially trying to do anything new or inventive. Then, on the 10th of March 2015, Jeremy Clarkson was suspended by the BBC for an alleged fracas with a producer. The remaining 3 episodes of Series 22 were pulled by the BBC and an internal investigation was launched by the BBC. Without a doubt, this is the biggest controversy the show ever found itself embroiled in. The future of the show was unclear for the first time since the end of the original show in 2001. There was now mounting speculation over the future of the show. The media storm was unbelievable, and certainly for a TV show. Most high-profile news stories surround political goings-on, but not here. It was a bit bonkers that so much coverage was being devoted to a BBC Two motoring show. Was it too much coverage? Well, you decide. On the 25th of March, Jeremy Clarkson's contract, which was up for renewal, would not be renewed. May and Hammond quickly quit as well, along with producer Andy Willman. Thus, the Clarkson-era Top Gear came to a rather abrupt end. There were several Top Gear films that were never made, as there were 3 episodes pulled by the BBC when Clarkson was suspended. Top Gear did return, but for 1 episode only. The episode aired on the 20th of June 2015, nearly 2 months after the previous episode aired. This finale was basically the 2 films that Top Gear managed to film before all of the fracas shit went down. The studio segment featured no audience and no special guest, just May and Hammond providing links between the films. The first film focused on classic cars and is typical Top Gear. It isn't especially outlandish or over the top, and more works as a simple and entertaining bit of Sunday evening telly. The second and final film centered around off-road SUVs and was the final film that Top Gear ever filmed with its then current presenting lineup. The film concluded at the same location where the infamous fracas took place. For a time, it was unknown as to what would happen to the motoring trio, but in July 2015 it was announced that they had partnered with Amazon to create a new motoring show. The show was later named The Grand Tour and began streaming its first series in November 2016. 3 series have since aired, with a 4th currently in production. The series is not too dissimilar from the Clarkson-era Top Gear, with really just a few changes. The first series was restricted by legal parameters, which meant that it could not include as many elements as the subsequent series did. The first series does feel a little bit like an Americanized version of the Clarkson Top Gear. From the second series onward, the feel and the tone from Clarkson's time on Top Gear becomes more apparent, not that it was totally absent from series 1. But what of Top Gear itself? It had a turbulent and unpopular series with Chris Evans, where ratings plummeted to just 2 million viewers in the space of only 6 weeks. Chris Evans quit after just 1 series, and his co-presenter Matt LeBlanc became the main presenter. Matt LeBlanc stayed with the show for a further 3 series, where the ratings remained around the 2 to 3 million range, but consistently. At time of writing, Top Gear is now presented by Paddy McGuinness, Freddie Flintoff and Chris Harris, who has been with the show already since 2016. The first episode reached 4 million viewers, so the future of the show may look secure, though I could be wrong. The Clarkson era is still to this day repeated on the channels such as Dave. The Clarkson era lasted for nearly 13 years, and while the way it came to an end was abrupt and controversial, it was always going to include in some way. Would Jeremy Clarkson, James May and Richard Hammond all still be presenting Top Gear to this day had none of them left? Hard to say. Whatever the case, the Clarkson era remains hugely entertaining and has left its mark on television and popular culture. And on that bombshell, it's time to end.
Good night!